Hey everyone, this is KOps office hours meeting from the 25th of September. I am Cyprian, your host for today. Please be nice to each other and bring up interesting topics. So, yes, let's start. Okay, so first review of actions from last time. We released 119 Alpha 4. There was a bit of a mix-up with the artifacts. I really thought that it would work without copying to S3 and artifacts IO and well, bumped into, let's say, a bug, but ended up being bug/feature. So we will discuss about it a bit later.
Yeah, thank you for doing that, Cyprian. Is that the one about the SHAs that we hit?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So yeah, that's the first in our discussion, right?
Yeah. So, but anyway, it works. We guided the people that couldn't use it to use the kops base URL, and everything went okay. So, yes, being an alpha, it wasn't such a big issue. Okay, next, Peter, office hours in different time zones. We can't hear you.
I'm going to share my screen so everyone can see this. So here's the Doodle poll results. This is in US Eastern time. There's one time slot with 4 votes and a few others with 3 votes. So maybe we go with the 4 votes. Tuesday at 9 a.m. Eastern.
I guess depends a lot on Justin's schedule.
Well, I mean, 9 a.m. works for me. It might not work for people, might not work terribly well for people on the West Coast, but I think we should try it. And actually, this is, I was wondering whether we could relate this to Hacktoberfest. And if we choose to do that, one of the things we could do is we could hold a, like one of the suggestions on Hacktoberfest is to hold a, effectively office hours for contributors type thing. And so we could try a couple of these time slots and see how they feel, see who shows up, see whether we get new people showing up in them. So like, it's super helpful to see like the couple of 3s. So like we can actually sort of experiment with a bunch of these if we want. I'm not gonna do 8 a.m. Sorry. 8 a.m. is a little tough for me actually. But yeah, 9 a.m. might work. I have to do school drop off for 8 a.m.
So should we formally decide on something or update the issue? And
let's step a bit back. So one of the topics was, do we want once a week or at least for Hacktoberfest time, or do we want to move it permanently to a different, I mean, do we want to keep the current one and add another one, or do we want to just move the current one?
I suggest we add one to start with, and we see like, like actually is 9 a.m. too early? Who shows up? Do new people show up? Is 9 a.m. too early for everyone? That sort of thing. Like, is Tuesday a bad day? Like, what happens in practice? We add one. We have a natural, if we choose to do Hacktoberfest, we have sort of a natural additional thing that won't cause too much conflict with like, what happens in each meeting type thing. So we can use that more for like digging into the code, or like that's like more in-depth technical discussions, I guess. And this one more for steering guidance, which is sort of how it's traditionally been. And sort of evaluate from there. But I propose we start by adding one, or possibly rotate through a couple of these slots and see how we feel, but not touching our current time slot until we are comfortable with the new time slot, and then we can make a more informed decision about raising the frequency, changing the time, whatever we want to do.
Should we consider doing it on opposite weeks from regular cops?
We can look at, yeah. I mean, like we could do a KOps hack session on Tuesday, except I can't remember that is that the first? I can't remember what day.
I think so.
To pull up a calendar.
No, it's this is the 29th.
Okay, so we could do the Thursday would be the first then, right? No,
yes.
No, the Friday would be, I don't even know.
Thursday's the first. Thursday
is the first, okay.
30 days has September.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So hopefully my kids will never watch this. So yes, we could do it we could also do it just like a little bit before the kickoff of that. But yeah, I think, yeah, looking at alternate weeks is a great idea, and not sticking to the same, doing the Thursday 9 a.m. slot and then doing a Friday noon Eastern slot is going to be, the same week would be weird. So
yeah, so next one would be Thursday, the October 1st, or?
Yeah, we could do Thursday, October 1st at 9 a.m. That is really starting Hacktoberfest, like very Eastern centric view, but like starting it like early on the 1st. Or we could do it on the 29th if we prefer to do the top voted slot first.
I think it would be pretty close to this one, and people would not get to
hear about it. I like that. Okay.
So, I mean, even if we want to do it, let's say more regularly, it's a bit awkward anyway you put it, because if you put it after, it's just 3 or 4 days after. If you put it before, it's 3-4 days before the regular one. So Thursday seems a bit more spaced in between.
I like that. So we'll try Thursday, October 1st at 9 a.m. Eastern, and not expect too many people from California to show up unless they feel like they want to.
Okay, so I will say once a week, one other slot, Thursday, 9 a.m.
That's where we're going to start, and we're going to sort of experiment, right?
Yeah. Okay. Any other ideas or thoughts about this? Okay, guess not. So moving on. 119 branch planning. I think the reported bugs kind of slowed down for 118. So I think it's pretty safe to branch, and I think we should release the first beta and then decide if we want to merge anything bigger into it or not. Because I didn't see any big movements in the last few weeks. So if there is no work done, maybe some of the features that were planned for 119, can we move to 120? Anyone, any thoughts of what they want to merge in 119 before we branch?
So I'm talking about 9953 later. I think we need to get an answer on that. That might be a blocker.
Okay, if you find something, issue or PR, can we tag them as blocks next?
It's tagged as of a few minutes ago.
I meant if you find something else,
yeah.
We can, let's say that at the end of the call, we look through what's tagged as blocks next. Is that okay?
Okay.
Any objections to do the branching anyway, or you really want it in before the branch?
I don't think it blocks branching.
Okay.
It would also be great to have the effort branched if we want to participate and encourage people to start contributing, to not say like actually can't contribute right now because we're like stabilizing the branch. So it'd be good to have master more open.
Okay, so branch as soon as possible, and then we see what we merge into 119. Any thoughts about beta 1? Should we wait a week or two or release it?
Well, I want to get a strategy in 9953, figure out what we want to do with that.
Okay, so after that we can release beta 1, right?
Yes, I think I'd like to reach a decision on this issue I filed this morning around the kube config and inference of the cluster. I think I'm probably the biggest objector, and I think I've probably satisfied myself that it's okay, not to preempt that discussion. So I don't think it's going to be a big deal, but I think we should just decide that it is okay before we.
Okay, so let's keep that for the end of the call, so as free discussion, and we can move to the next few things. So the next one is mine. It's related to kops artifacts hashes. Until now, they were only picked up from the S3 mirror, considering it was the safest, let's say. And I added a PR to use all the mirrors to read those hashes in case one of them is down, to have a backup. I had a discussion with Justin over email, and he said that this was also a security feature because at least GitHub probably can be modified manually, guess, or I don't know, it's less secure.
It's more that if we want to have, what it lets us do is it lets us have untrusted mirrors in a list. I'm not sure whether I consider GitHub untrusted or not, but if we wanted to have mirrors that we really didn't have to trust, we can do that today by sort of having the two lists. So as long as anything we download from a mirror is SHA checked, and we got that SHA from something we trust more, we can sort of add almost any mirror to that, the wide list, but we need to keep the list of sources of the SHAs more tightly controlled to ones which we feel we can trust.
But can't we just do that by ordering?
I don't think ordering is necessarily safe, because what if like they all happen to be down? But like I think we could have two lists, like a fully trusted and a wider list. I don't know actually if we would put where we would put GitHub. Like would we consider it fully trusted? Probably, but I don't know.
Well, if someone has access to mess with GitHub, can pretty much put another kops binary and that's it.
Yes, that's a good point. Excellent point. And I think, yeah, so we need to decide right now, GitHub is definitely in the critical trusted path. We could say, look, always download from artifacts.k8s.io, and then it's no longer in the critical trusted path. But yes, I think it's fine to, so I think your change is great. I don't think we have any mirrors today that we consider untrusted. I do think it would be great in future to be able to have untrusted mirrors. So it's not necessarily a blocker for any releases, but it would be a nice feature to be able to have these two mirror lists, one of which could be a broad list of mirrors that aren't particularly trusted, or we don't have to worry about trusting them. Like we just don't even have to question whether we need to, because if it's there and it matches, great. If it doesn't matter. Okay,
but I think unless we actually find some mirrors that we don't trust, this is, I don't know, an optimization that we shouldn't do. Right now, I think the order that I put is artifacts, GitHub, and then S3.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that's the greatest, or if you want to, considering that S3 is legacy, or do we
I like that. I like that notion. I think we can't rely on the ordering to be a security guarantee, because someone could always block. Like, it's fairly easy to attack and like block a particular access to a particular site. But I think that ordering makes sense. Long term, I agree. We want artifacts like kids.io to be the canonical source, so that we get onto that sort of trusted release process. And now we're just quibbling about like the potential existence of future other mirrors, and where we put GitHub in the trust hierarchy, I guess. But yeah, it's not urgent, as you say. It's a feature for the future. You're right.
If we find some way of, or some mirrors that we want to use, then it would be pretty easy to add trusted and untrusted later. Okay. Anyone, any other thoughts on this? Okay, guess not. So next one, again, me, default Docker version. So I bumped Docker to 1903.13 for, let's say, 119. Starting with 117, the Docker 119.03 is considered as tested. There is no there is no patch version in the Kubernetes release notes. So basically we can use anything. There is also the precedent that we did it for the CVE. We bumped everything to .11. And also we do it for pretty much anything else, like CNIs and so on. So I don't think we should keep the container runtime to a fixed version. And I mean, I think that it should be fixed to the minor version, but the patch versions should be rolling based on the kops release. So if you have something new, then people should be upgraded to something new.
That's probably more consistent with the way we do things otherwise. And as long as we do it on the KOps minor version upgrades, I think that's fine. Like I don't want to start doing it on like a patch release. I don't want, unless it's a security issue, I don't want to do it on a patch release. How about that?
Yeah, so I agree with that.
Was there anything out of interest in the difference between .11 and .13 that motivated this, or was it just hygiene?
I think I saw something a bit interesting in there. One of the things was that they changed to a newer containerd. So they considered that containerd they moved from the 1.2 branch to the 1.3 branch, which is a pretty important change from many points of view. And also there were some, well, I think there were some Windows things, but these are not really important to us. I don't really remember all the patches. I just wanted to pick up the latest bug fixes because those are not always put into the release notes.
Okay, the containerd moving to a bigger minor version is sort of interesting in terms of our rules, right? Like that's not a patch change anymore. But yes, yeah, that seems.
Yeah, as long as they consider it safe and pretty much they build it. So.
Yeah. Okay.
Question: if I manage to add all the hashes for all the Docker versions, would it be okay? So if anyone wants to use like, I don't know, 1903.12, because I will move to TGZ. We are already on TGZ. So basically means a list of hashes for all the releases. Would it be okay to put them so anyone can use any Docker version?
Yeah, I think that's a purely additive thing and just nicer user experience. I think we should also, I don't know whether you you previously talked about being able to allow users to specify the hash alongside a version. I don't know whether you've done that as well.
I'm working on that, and I think this week I will have the PR. And this other thing to specify the version, I will allow to specify the version, but you will need to specify a hash. So if you want to provide a newer version, but for which we don't have a hash, provide the hash for it. And also to provide also the URL. So URL and hash. So to be.
Yeah. That sounds good. And being able to specify 1903.11, if there's some incompatibility with .13, like that sounds like a good, reasonable user experience in the event that something goes wrong. So that sounds good. And like, yeah, similarly with 12, like it feels like a good thing to have. Like, yes, I like that. Don't know how others feel.
Okay, no objections. And the next one is again mine, ARM64 support. Just try to do a rebase after the latest changes. Unfortunately, I can't do much because the new image is AMD 64 only. The new base.
Oh no, I thought the whole point. Really?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a whoops. Okay. I thought we moved to that image because it supported ARM64, but I will, so, okay.
We moved to that image because the Hyper one is no longer supported, but yeah.
Okay, I mean, we can build, all right, I will look at that again. I'm sorry, I thought I was actually gonna address the issue, but I apologize, it does not. One of the things we can do, obviously, is we can, I can see whether, that's a Google maintained image. I can see whether Google can build that for ARM64. I can see whether we want to take ownership of it. I don't think we do, but that's not the end of the world. But and we can look again for other images that might be available on all architectures and supported.
For sure, there are such images on Docker Hub, but
we also want, sort of a clarity on how they are built, I think.
Okay. So should be something in the Kubernetes repos.
Yes, I mean, the one we switched to, the marketplace, cloud marketplace, is not in the Kubernetes repos. It's under a some Google GitHub, but the scripts and procedure to generate them is out there. So I felt reasonably comfortable with that. Yeah.
I didn't see anything ARM related there. Maybe there are images that are just not labeled, but
I will double check and find out why we don't have ARM images.
Okay, maybe you can look into that, or I don't know, see if we can find a solution.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Next one, Justin, options for continuing to infer the cluster from kubeconfig.
Yes, so I filed this issue basically to this. I think we should reach a decision on what we want to do with this. One of the things we've historically done is inferred the cluster name from the current kubeconfig, which is useful primarily for users interacting with the CLI directly, not running it in Jenkins or any other wrapper, for example. But it is a nice sort of, I guess I call it like optimization or UX accommodation for that makes it a little nicer to run a sequence of kops commands. We've lost some of that today because we made a good security change to not export kubeconfig by default. And so what that means is there is no kubeconfig from which to infer the cluster name. So you have to, so currently a user would have to type the cluster name repeatedly. There is a workaround where you can pass, I think, admin or something, or export. I think it's admin as a flag to update cluster, and it will create that kubeconfig for you. There is a potential longer term, or there's another workaround where we can still export kubeconfig without exporting a forever credential. by making use of some currently experimental functionality to generate a credential, a short-lived credential on the fly and renew it when it's required. I wrote that. It wasn't intended to ship immediately. It's a little bit more involved. So those are our sort of options, I would say. I wanted to get agreement that we are okay with sort of the current way it currently works, and we might need to tweak some of the, either we need to like continue to export some variety of kubeconfig, or we need to say that the new user experience for 119, possibly not for 120 if we get in the dynamic generation, but for 119 at least, will require you to specify the cluster name every time, or for us to recommend the admin flag.
Well, there are two issues here. One is the exporting the kube config or setting the kube config context to the cluster, and the other is exporting the admin credentials.
That is true, yes.
I think we might want to move to always setting the context for those operations, but not exporting the credentials.
Yes, although it is weird to export a kubeconfig which is broken, which is not going to work, right? In that you need.
Well, in some cases, you might have a kubeconfig with, say, OIDC, which is going to work. It's just, and the issue is changing your context to the right cluster.
So this does suggest an option, which is we do this and we say, yes, we can export it with no credentials. You can pass an option to say use the experimental generation. You can say, I don't know how you activate OIDC but that sort of behavior, and you can activate the legacy mode. And then we could also, the nice thing about this is that then the behavior doesn't change too much between like the versions, where 118 or at least 117, it was inferred. 119, it will be required, and 120, it goes back to being inferred because we're able to always export via one means or the other, which I'm not wild about. So I like that suggestion that we can, by default, export a kubeconfig which does not have credentials in it.
Or at least make sure your context is set that it can infer.
Yeah, so you can still infer, as you point out, these are separate issues. You can still infer.
But you might not, you might not have credentials.
Yes, so we might need another command, which actually is not a bad thing. Like when I think about like the sort of discovery flow, we might need to add another command temporarily to say like export your kubeconfig credentials using this command, and then we can have a nice discussion of like, here's like, we'll do a static credential in this guide, which isn't the most secure, and you might want to consider OIDC link, and you might want to consider dynamic like short-lived credentials link, right? Experimental may go beta in 120 or something like that. I like that approach. Okay. If other people agree with that idea, I can implement the always export, but not always export credentials so that we have that behavior. We don't change the behavior in terms of inferring the cluster name. Okay, thank you. I like that approach. Good suggestion, John. Thank you.
Cool. So decided, and we will go with the suggestion, right?
That's plan of record. We'll see, unless I mess it up, right?
Well,
yeah, and I suspect that makes that issue a blocks 119.
Likely, yes. I'll move it.
Okay. Next, John, rolling update failures, upgrading over kops 119.
Yeah, so in 119, I changed the node bring up our bootstrap to use kops controller as a way of getting the certificates. The problem that we found is that when you're upgrading from an earlier kops to kops 119, as soon as you apply your cluster, or as soon as that new kops controller manifest gets applied, it will then rolling update that deployment, or sorry, that daemon set, and all of the kops controllers on your old control plane nodes will fail to come up because they don't have access to files that the new version of NodeUp provisions. And so your control plane nodes fail cluster validation, and so rolling update will not proceed. So now on non-AWS, there was a workaround where you could sort of make the directory so it could mount the directory, but on AWS, you're going to actually need secrets provisioned for that, for kops controller to come up. So I'm not quite sure what the solution is. We might have to release note that you have to do a cloud-only rolling update of your control plane, or, and I don't know if we can put the daemon set in, if we put the daemon set in delete update mode or on delete, whether that would take effect early enough to not break the old nodes.
And so this manifests, I'm sorry, which nodes are we, I need to read this issue in more detail.
So the issue is the kops controller is deployed using a daemon set. So the daemon set gets updated first, which then causes it to try to provision the new kops controller pods on the old control plane nodes. And that fails because it's trying to host mount volumes for files that aren't provisioned because you haven't the new node up.
Two approaches come to mind. One of which is to tolerate this, which isn't great, tolerate this in the validation logic. I say, actually, this is not really a problem. That seems like it might mask something, but it's an option. The other one is to use a label selector. So we've done this elsewhere. I think like the Fluenty had a DS ready and a node label, so that we would effectively label the nodes, I guess, with some form of label such that we would only target the newer controller to the newer nodes. That does require multiple daemon sets. It's a bit of a pain, but it's a pattern we can then reuse when we do more of this, as I'm sure we will.
Actually, I would probably just go with one daemon set and not run kops.
Sorry, can you repeat? I missed that.
I was thinking you would just have one daemon set and only run kops controller on the new nodes.
So select it. Yes, that would work too, because we'd effectively just turn them off on the old ones.
Yeah. We could do that. And the question is, how do we name this, and what's our design for the next time we have to do something like this?
Could we use the same strategy where we just change the label, include the version in some way, and the version's not ideal, but yes, something like that. Basically have a new label and a new node selector and use the same trick.
So probably, probably more of a capability type label. I don't know. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm having trouble coming up with a name for it.
But. Fluenty used ds-ready, which is fine, but we can probably. I also don't like that it's sort of there now forever. But like it'd be nice if it rolled off, but I don't know where to make it roll off.
Be there as long as these sort upgrades from 118.
Right.
Okay, so So we're going with a label.
If it works, I think that's reasonable. I need to think a little bit about.
I think we might want to change to on delete just in preparation for the next time.
Okay. I don't know whether we can change all these, to be honest. Like, I know that there are some rules. The other thing is I need to think about what happens if we get unlucky and like the new control plane node crashes. I think we'd be okay, but like just thinking about what happens there.
Yeah, well, I think we have an existing problem with not being able to roll back add-ons.
It would not surprise me.
Roll forwards.
I'll definitely take a look at this issue, particularly as it blocks. I agree it should block, and it is marked as blocking. And yeah, I think the node label feels like the most likely to be, yes, it's most likely to be reasonable, particularly because the other thing I suggested, the ignoring, is not going to be any more reliable. It's just going to be that we're ignoring it.
I kind of wish we had gone with a static manifest, but it's too late for that. Okay.
Is it too late for that?
Yeah, I'm curious also.
I think we need some features. It's probably a little late in the release cycle for it. We can look at it for
Yeah.
next time. How about that?
Yeah.
Would it be still late in the release cycle if we do another alpha? We are in alpha mode.
Yeah. I
Technically,
suppose we could use a label in the opposite direction to move to a static manifest.
Right, exactly. We just turn it, or just delete the daemon set, but turn it off effectively. Yes.
Yeah, so leave the old daemon set spec labeled so it won't run on new nodes.
I think we can do that. Yes.
yeah, we can. Why not? We can add a release note that people can delete it after migrating to 119.
Will that actually, can a new node come up with the old? We rely on doing the control plane first, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Like discovering whether node labels can be changed on a daemon set is probably the first order of business.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, it's not a no on changes to a static manifest. It's definitely one to think about, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So we have a direction.
Thank you.
Cool. Sounds even better. Okay, next, Peter, NLB support.
So this was, we decided this was our most likely workaround for the CA ACM certificate issue that stemmed as a result of us disabling basic auth. And so that's now totally gone in 119. And so in order for anyone with a ACM cert on their API load balancer to be able to authenticate with kops credentials, we need some way of providing a TCP listener if we're using client certificate authentication for the kops credentials kubeconfig that it generates. So the NLB seemed to be the most reasonable path forward for that. This is a pretty big MR or pull request. I'll admit I haven't had a chance to review it recently, but I'm thinking that this will need to go into 119, which is a bit unfortunate for how big it is and how significant of a change it'll be. So if anyone else can provide input on it, that would be much appreciated. I guess my concerns are specifically the migration path, and if we can avoid downtime, which would likely involve needing to be running both an ELB and NLB at the same time, and what that would look like from the API design or other, kops update commands that would need to be involved with doing that. So if anyone else has any other concerns or anything, it'd be nice to help move this forward.
Yeah, the other concern is he's having a problem with the health checks because he doesn't support HTTPS health checks.
That's right. Hey John, my name is Christian. I haven't met a lot of you guys, but I am listening, and let me know if you can't hear me very clearly. But as John said, the health checks are failing due to not supporting HTTPS.
Well, that we can fix, because if I recall correctly, we recently built our own health checker thing, so we can support HTTP health checks without too much trouble, as long as it's on the same. Yeah, we can just, we can add a port and do that, or add a port.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Something like that, right?
Okay, let's put that in the minutes.
Would we want to try to avoid API downtime rather than just deleting the ELB and reprovisioning the NLB and updating DNS and waiting for that to be ready and having the API down that entire time?
How long does it actually take? Because if it's like 10 seconds, I doubt it's a real.
5 minutes would be my guess.
The DNS TTL.
The DNS. Yeah, exactly. I think it would just be the DNS TTL.
Well, the NLB takes time to become ready too.
You mean the target groups?
Like when you create an NLB, it's not available right away. It takes some time.
Yeah, it's target groups are not ready. So once they're ready, it's pretty fast. But you're right, it takes about 2 minutes, I think.
Right, and then cleanup is done usually first, so perhaps the order could be changed so that cleanup happens. I mean, there's a reason to do cleanup first, I suppose, but we could do cleanup after the NLB is ready as well.
One other idea would be to not make it default. So I agree with Peter that is needed for the use case of, I don't know, custom certs. But generally people won't really care if it's NLB or classic ELB like it is now. So we can have it as an option and document the downsides. I don't know if it's really easy to change the order and what else will break, but if someone wants to do it and really knows the downsides of it, I guess they can live with 2 minutes of API downtime, or I don't know, 5.
Sure, there's also the fact that the master nodes need to be rolled to pick up the new cert. And then the other issue is, at least that's what I remember it being. I'll double check perhaps this weekend one more time, but I remember I had to roll the masters last time. And then also, sorry about that. Also, there was an issue with the, so yes, rolling the masters, I believe is the one other downside to it. And I guess that's the only thing I can think of right this second.
I wonder if it's possible to not clean it up until the next time you do a update cluster. To say, if you don't have an NLB, then please keep the ELB around.
Looking at the code, could we have class both, which creates both tasks? I'm just sort of, it looks like we have a if else, and we yeah.
Well, we have the API DNS, so it has to point to just one of them.
Right, let's pick one, but we could, I wonder if we could say in the both case, I don't know what we'd pick, but yeah, I guess we'd switch to the new one, like NLB over ELB, and then I don't know. It's just an idea.
Sounds like we might need, yeah, so a both, and then a second option where it's like, which one of the both do you want to point DNS to? But that's more and more config options, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, it might be simpler just to key off of does it exist already.
That's true. So you run it a second time, and then,
Yeah, and then I'll
that
clean it
time
up.
it switches. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it'll switch and create the new one, but it won't clean up the old one until the next time.
What would migrating backwards look like then? How would it know to keep the DNS on the ELB rather than NLB if you wanted to switch back?
Well, it would be the same thing as if what the thing you're trying to switch to doesn't exist, it would keep the old one
And leave the DNS pointed.
Yeah, and yeah.
And you're sure that that would be actually easy to do?
I don't know if it'd be easy to do.
Sounds delicate, but might work.
Okay, seems a bit
I
complicated.
can definitely try it out and get back with how easy that is.
Otherwise, I guess the option of having both and people doing it by themselves in 2 steps may be easier.
Yeah.
Sorry, can you repeat that again?
Right now you have the option of choosing classic or network, right? There was a proposal to add another option to say both, and that would have to have both of them created. And people that want to migrate from classic to NLB would have to go manually through both and then to NLB if they want to do it without downtime.
Okay, so they would have to manually delete the second or the old ELB in that case?
No. So you are now by default will be classic, right?
Right.
Then you will change the cluster spec to both. It will create the NLB. Then after applying everything, you change to NLB if you want, or you keep both load balancers.
I see. So you make one more update to the cluster spec.
Yeah.
For the API field having a value of both, which load balancer would the DNS point to?
With the value of both, I guess you would go to the whatever, I mean, if they both work, then it's arbitrary, but if you want no downtime, then I think the decision's made to, yeah, I don't know what would happen if I don't know what the negative is to point from one to the other, but I would have to see if I point to if I create an NLB and then there's going to be downtime, then we'll keep it on the ELB. If it's arbitrary, then obviously if they're going to go to both, then how do you decide? Yeah, that's a good question. Don't somebody has to point you in the right direction?
We could have a comma separated, it might be interesting to try a comma separated list, right? Or a slice, I don't, but, and then that allows for the user to express it, and we would document the procedure for a 0 downtime switch. It might be overkill, right? I don't know. John,
I think we have ideas. I think we have ideas to try out, and
yes,
we can experiment from there.
So I think the main point would be to not complicate the code too much for this.
Yeah.
No, keep it simple, and well, that's it.
I like that. That sounds good.
Cool. So next one, Peter again, Bottle Rocket OS support.
So I made a lot of good progress on this. I'm currently blocked by the user data of BottleRocket needs to have access to the CA certificate, the cluster's CA. And so this is kind of a new dependency for the user data, because previously it didn't need to know the CA. And I'm trying to follow the model that Justin followed with the OIDC provider now needing to know the CA. But I'm still having issues with how the fee task and all the rendering and the dependency tree is built. So I'm getting close to having support, but that's currently my blocker. So if anyone can comment on it, that would be great.
I'll definitely take a look. Yes, I will. Yeah, okay. The dry run problem is we added is ready or something like that. We added an interface here on the dry run problem. I thought it was generic, but it might not be generic. But there should be an approach there. But it sounds like there's a deeper problem, not just dry run, right? Or is it just dry run?
For that problem, it was just dry run.
Okay. So that could be a special, like, it sounds like it's because it's embedded in, or it's embedded in something else, so the default doesn't pick it up, but there's an interface which you can check and then call is ready and sort of skip it type thing.
Right, because it's like when you do a dry run, it prints the user data to the output. And so if the user data now depends on a cert that's not being created as a part of the dry run, what does it print? That's like the missing link for me.
Yes, but if I recall correctly, it doesn't print the full data on a create. It prints something like so it prints a diff when it sort of works out. Like it will print a diff. The second time through it will print a nice diff, and but the first time I think it just doesn't print it because it would just be too big anyway. So it just doesn't output it.
Okay.
Anything else, Peter? No. Okay.
Well, on Bottlerocket, I mean, I do have a concern. It completely cuts out node up, so it's a very different animal than anything else. So I'm a little worried about the long-term maintenance aspects are going to be.
You mean that it's even more, let's say, not messed up, but special than Core OS, for example?
Yeah, I mean, it has to bootstrap a different way than everything else. That it has to, any feature we have that is implemented partially in NodeUp is going to be either not supported or done differently on Bottlerocket.
Well, I guess pretty much everything will be gone. It's just attaching a node without any control from our part. No Docker version, no Kubernetes version, I guess, either.
Yeah, I think if we make it clear in our documentation that this is very limited, and even in our API validation, which I started to add in the PR, just make it clear that you're kind of on your own if you're choosing to use it. But there were a lot of thumbs ups on the issue requesting it, so it seemed fairly popular. And then we can add end-to-end test coverage for the basic scenarios too.
You're very much on AWS's own.
Okay, sorry, let's move to the recurring topics. Release plan for the next 2 weeks. I don't think there's anything on the 118 or 117 branches, unless someone else knows of a cherry pick or something. So the only thing is either another alpha or 119 beta 1.
I suspect it depends on what happens with 9953, right? And I also don't know whether we want to put 9011, the NLB support. Do we consider that a 119 blocker or 119 thing we should address?
Well, the consequence of it, the blocker is the custom certificates for the load balancer, for the API load balancer. So the only way the only workaround around it was with NLB, or at least at the moment. So that's the main blocker. 119 will not be able to work with that.
That sounds pretty serious to me, right? I mean, I don't know how many people use it, but I know some people use it, and like that would be a big regression for those people.
They already bumped into it into 118, and we gave them the workaround, but that won't be available in 119.
Yeah, so they'd be stuck on Kubernetes 118 or
Until when, right? Until
yeah, until we get it fixed. Yeah.
So that sounds
until we get NLB working.
And one of the things I really like about the NLB PR, by the way, is we sort of buried the lead. It adds support for NLB, right? It's not just a workaround for this, but like anyone that wants to use NLB for this can also use NLB, which is really good. Like that's awesome. Like that we shouldn't NLB. AWS is like pushing NLB pretty hard and trying to get rid of ELB, and yeah, so like that is a big win. So getting it in. My view is between those, I don't put 9990 in the same bucket, the kube config thing in the same bucket, but between those two, it sounds like we are unlikely to do a beta in the next 2 weeks, but I say we put 9011, the NLB support in it, or John's typing faster than I can do so. Put it in as like at least a blocker, or treat as a blocker and evaluate.
Okay, and also John's issue with
9953, yes. 9953, yeah. I mean, 9953 and 9901 feel like fairly big things that are significant challenges that are going to be a benefit for the extra 2 weeks. 9990 hopefully won't be too much work.
Okay, if all of these are ready, should I create a new alpha or wait for the next?
I think if either of the two significant features land, we could create a new alpha. I think.
Okay, it's not a big deal now that I have the tooling, so should be okay. And would it be okay to do the release now that the hash fix is in, and you can copy later the artifacts to the mirrors?
Oh yeah, good point. Yes, it's not a blocker anymore. That's great. Great point.
Okay. Sorry, I have just 2 things, small ones. If you can look at the chat, since a month or 2 ago, I don't know who did some changes around. I keep seeing load balancer for API server false to true on any update. So I tried to look into it, but
it's I think it's in the code as spurious updates. I thought I'd seen this. I can if you open an issue, it's an easy fix. We just need to, when we do in the find method, we need to make sure that the for API server in the
I don't understand the logic, so probably you two are better suited for it. And we
file
will
an issue.
Yeah,
File an issue.
I just got it today again, and
add it to the blockers list, and then it's easy to bang out. So
and another one, I noticed 2 or 3 cases where people had problems upgrading ATCD to newer version. So they were coming from, let's say, 3.2 or something, or 3.2, what doesn't matter. And the upgrade to 3.4.3 was stuck. One of the nodes, not the leader, was 3.4.3, and the other 2 didn't want to upgrade.
okay. I remember there was an issue, but it wasn't. Has this been filed as an issue or not? Because I still need to look at those etcd manager issues.
I didn't have time to file it. I can file it as an issue in etcd manager repo, or do you want it in kops as blocker?
etcd manager repo, I think, and then but you can put it in the blocker list, referencing that one. I think that's fine. Because there's also another one in etcd manager I need to check where someone was saying, I think you were saying, but yeah, there's a couple of etcd manager issues that I need to like dig down and dig through.
Okay, I will add an issue for that, but seemed a bit important compared to others. Okay, I think that's pretty much it for this week. I guess we will meet again on Thursday.
Yes, Thursday at 9 a.m. Eastern for anyone that wants to attend. We will try to do some, oh, I guess we didn't talk about Hacktoberfest, but I want to sort of at least participate in that. If anyone else wants to, they're very welcome to, but I was gonna kick that off and see if people wanted to show up, and please publicize it in whatever forums you want to.
Okay. So I guess this is it for this week. Have a great weekend, everyone, and see you on Thursday.
Thanks for hosting, Cyprian. Great job.
Thanks for letting me do it. Thank you. Bye-bye.